Greetings. In this special episode of Sauna Talk, I'm joined inside one of the Culture of Bathing Sauna Village saunas in New York City by three fellow authors whose work explores heat bathing culture from very different perspectives. This conversation was recorded on the Sauna Bench during the 2026 Culture of Bathing Festival in New York City. And recorded during the Culture of Bathing 2.0 gathering on the East River, this conversation brings together authors Yuval Zohar, who wrote Towards a Nude Architecture, Emma O'Kelly, author of Sauna, The Power of Deep Heat and Wild Sauna, and Bill Gifford, who wrote Hotwired, How Heat Makes Us Stronger, and yours truly, Glenn Auerbach, author of Sauna Build Start to Finish. On the bench, as conversation flows and steam rises, our discussion moves across continents and traditions, from Japanese sento bathhouses and onsen towns to the surprising explosion of wild sauna culture along the coasts of Great Britain. Along the way, we explore the global revival of sauna and bathhouse culture, why community bathing is making a comeback, the science behind heat, mood, and the sauna high, Japan's evolving bathing traditions, the rapid growth of sauna culture in the UK, and the empowering idea that anyone can build their own sauna. At its core, this conversation reflects a shared belief among all four authors that good heat knows no borders. So, welcome to this thoughtful and lively exchange about sauna, culture, connection, and the universal human experience of heat. Greetings! This show is brought to you by Sauna Build Start to Finish. This is a book that I wrote in 2013, now in its fourth edition. It's for the DIY sauna builder, the casual sauna builder. You may be an accountant, you may be a lawyer, you may be a father, you may be a mother. This is a slow and steady approach to sauna building, from start to finish. We go through Finnish rules, British diplomacy, American adaptability, and bring you a full spectrum guide to building your own sauna. Indoor electric, outdoor wood-fired. We cover it all. Just keep in mind the Holy Trinity: heat, steam, ventilation. We get those three covered, you're on your way to building a great sauna. To order the book, go to saunatimes.com. Up at the top, click ebook, and get your copy today. It's sauna time. Well, greetings, listeners, and we're reporting from the shoreline, the East River here in New York City, and I'm here with
Yuval Zohar,
Bill Gifford,
Emma O'Kelly,
and Glenn Auerbach. And this is an impromptu sauna talk. We are four authors who attended the Culture of Bathing. This is Culture of Bathing 2.0, the second year, based in New York, put on by the Therme Group. And I just like to dive in because literally the four books with these four authors are sitting on the lower bench of one of the 16 saunas here on site at the Sauna Village. And the biggest question is who to start with first. And the real challenge is the interconnectivity of these four books as it relates to this thing we do and this this place we go and this thing we love. And Yuval, I thought I'd start with you, and if you could tell listeners about your background, where are you from, and what was the impetus to write this wonderful book, Towards a Nude Architecture?
Sure. Happy to be sitting here sweating with my fellow authors. I was born in Israel. I grew up in the States in Baltimore, and then I lived in China for a while. Back then, Spring Airlines had just opened up, which was China's first budget airline, and it was $100 round trip, Shanghai, Tokyo. every chance I got, I would take a flight to Tokyo, rent a car, and travel to ever more remote onsen. And I've been doing that for almost 15 years. And then maybe 5 years ago, during the deep existential boredom of COVID, I was looking for a project that I could sink my teeth into and had full creative control over. And that's when I started putting this together. And the book, I'd been working on it for 5 years and just published about 8 months ago.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Wonderful. And you live where?
I live in Japan right now in a small countryside hot spring town called Yugawara.
Got it. Emma, where do you live?
I live in London.
And tell us a little bit about Sauna, The Power of Deep Heat. This is your first book, right?
That was my first book. That was published in 2022. And that was me and a Finnish photographer. We went around the Nordics. So we started in Finland and we went to the Baltics as well. And that wasn't really, there were only a couple of saunas from the UK in that book because there weren't any saunas in the UK at that time.
Right. And now, to take things forward, you just published your second book.
Yes, my second book, Wild Sauna, came out last year, and that was a guide to the wild saunas of the UK because in the interim, the UK has suddenly become a huge sauna bathing nation, and the wild saunas are the ones that really started the whole movement in the UK.
And is it true with your second book that the biggest challenge was when to hit stop? Because each time you were getting closer to the finish line, more saunas were being put up along the coastline and everywhere. Is that right?
Oh gosh, totally. It was like I had to thank God for a deadline because I had to stop. There was a cut-off point, and every day on Instagram someone else would be emailing me going, I've just opened, can you please squeeze me in? And eventually it was a no. Yeah. And there are 189 saunas in that book, and now there are 611 saunas. So in the space of like 6 months.
In Great Britain and Ireland, or just
No, in just Great Britain, 611 saunas as of February 2026.
Amazing. Bill, welcome to Sauna Talk. We'll talk a little bit in more depth about Hotwired, but maybe staying with that theme, did you have a deadline, and how did that help propel your book?
My deadline is when my editor pulls it out of my cold, dead fingers and yanks it away. And she basically did that and forbade me from messing with it any further because I'm a perfectionist. But anyway, I think what we all share is this fascination with heat and with different kinds of heat bathing cultures, and it really is an endless topic. On the cultural side, Yuval talks about, on your side, as a sort of the English phenomenon. And by the way, Emma, your book is by my bedside.
Oh, thank you, Bill. Your book will be my mind when it comes out.
And Yuval has the best title, which Towards a Nude Architecture. How could you not want to read that book?
And my book is by your bedside. I thought I was going to skim Hotwired and just kind of like run through. I was anticipating a little bit more technical side, but you did something really compelling in the book with this interweaving of training for an event, and it kind of comes back within the book throughout the book. Tell us about that.
Well, athletes have used saunas for decades, and especially in the endurance sports. And now this kind of heat training is essential for Olympic athletes because the Olympics are getting hotter and hotter. The Olympics in Tokyo were the hottest Olympics ever, so they have to condition themselves for heat. So very often they'll combine training and a sauna session to expand that heat acclimation.
Yeah, wonderful. Pausing on that, I have to self-promote my book about heat.
Well, can I promote your book?
Yeah. Go ahead,
So
please.
Glenn, your book, I'm going to buy your book and put it on top of Emma's book by the bedside when I want to piss off my partner and build a sauna in the backyard by myself.
Well, that's good. It's an inspiring piece to encourage others to make it happen for themselves.
I talk to so many people who are like, I want to build a sauna. Like guys my age, like 50-year-old guys.
Yeah.
They all want to build a sauna themselves.
I also have loads of people coming to me saying, how can I build a sauna? And I point them to your book, Glenn, because obviously I don't know how to build a sauna.
The book is about empowerment, right? Like, this is not a complicated structure, this place we go. And to kind of break it down into very layman's terms, simple things, one of the things that gives me great joy is when a librarian builds a sauna, or a lawyer builds a sauna, or a nurse builds a sauna. Like this is it kind of breaks the barrier down a little bit. And I don't know, does someone want to pick up on that, Yuval, maybe about Japan?
I mean, it is interesting how egalitarian some of these things can be, or push towards very specialized places. I mean, in Japan, there's literally areas where they give you a shovel and you go by the riverbed and you dig out your own onsen, because it's a natural thing that comes directly from the ground. Depending on where you are in the country, it's much more easily accessible than other places where you have to dig hundreds of meters down. So access to this really, what amounts to be a natural utility is super interesting, and it differs all across the country.
Well said, and the world.
I live in the American West. We have tons of hot springs in Utah and Colorado, and it's similar. People go and kind of stack rocks and create pools, and they've been there for decades or longer. I mean, the Native Americans had sacred sites around hot springs. And they were, I mean, all you have to do is hike in to enjoy it, but they're often not very developed.
So, Yuval, there's something that you spoke about earlier in your presentation here at the Culture of Bathing Gathering, and I'd love for you to expand a little bit further on it and go forward with it.
Sure. One of the main reasons I wanted to write this book with my architectural background was that over the last 50, 60 years, the decline of the sento, the public bathhouse in Japanese context, and the onsen also, have experienced sharp drop in numbers. I mean, from 1968, which was its height, there was around 18,000 in all of Japan. This is for sento specifically. And now there's around 3,000 only. And it's getting pulled into either direction, into super private. Of course, everybody starts to have a bath in their home and stops using these local neighborhood sento for their utilitarian purpose of washing. And then it's gone to the ultra other end of the spectrum, very public, almost frictionless, a bit consumerist super sentos, these giant bathing spaces, which are really beyond the scale that's necessary to connect with people on a personal level. So I really wanted to bring attention to those declining numbers, but also to the optimistic point that there are now, there's a bit of a revival, a bit of a renaissance. It's like what's happening in New York is happening across Japan with sento and bathing structures, public bathing structures, with the added component of sauna, which has become very trendy and very popular.
Yeah, and I want to stay with you on that. For those listeners, most of us listeners most likely have not been to Japan. And for definition's sake, what is sento, and how does it differ, or is it aligned with what we know as sauna in the West?
Sure, yeah. A sento is a public bathhouse. And it's usually filled with baths that are tap water, and rarely they also bring onsen water being natural mineral hot spring water into it. But it's a neighborhood scale, it's daily use, it's utilitarian and a communal place that's found all across cities in Japan.
So in the book, you speak about a major decline, and yet also on the heels of that, we're seeing this renaissance.
Right.
And staying on that theme, over to Great Britain, you did speak about the Renaissance. And I loved in your speech this morning where you talked about typically a movement will start in the cities, London. But Emma, you spoke about how really this one was decentralized around the coast, right?
It was, and it goes back to that idea of declining communities that you were talking about, Yuval, because people don't go to the pub as much or church anymore. All these communal meeting places are just closing down, and COVID made that much, much more extreme. And so these saunas in these places create communities. They're community incubators, and that's what's really interesting about it. They bring new life back to these rural areas where, some of the seaside towns around the UK are quite depressing, and really it's a big problem. There's no jobs, there's nothing going on, and so having the swimming communities and the sauna communities is breathing life into those areas as well. And then, the cities have caught on because of loneliness as well. Yeah. It's everywhere. Of course, in the cities, it's the same. Right. The same feeling. So,
And there, we could call this loneliness epidemic is the sort of what brings us to this space emotionally, mentally, but the physical connection to heat and the space. And this is a little bit, this is certainly more on your line, Bill, with your work, Hot Wired, and the physical connection to heat. You go very deep on this within Hot Wired. Go ahead.
I think it's physical. I think it's also emotional and sort of psychological. But I think it's not an accident that sauna is becoming and bathing is becoming popular during the COVID rebound. I mean, we went from a very lonely, fragmented time, and I think people are craving that connection, especially in a place like New York, where you have 50 million bathhouses popping up everywhere. Okay, I got off track.
Well, not at all. We were talking about this whole mental hunger for connection.
Yeah, like so it's not an accident that places like Japan, places like Finland have developed these sort of heat bathing traditions because they're cold places. And I think evolutionarily we kind of crave warmth and heat because that was survival, and it's impossible to separate that from community. Like you were never alone back in our ancestral past, but you'd be in these spaces together.
As you look at the work you did in Hot Wired, what surprised you the most, or what was the most like aha or revelation through your research with the book?
There's a direct effect of heat on mood and on depression. I mean, it's an antidepressant, basically, is the quickest way to say that.
Staying on that, take us one level deeper, the metabolic aspect of that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people talk about the physical benefits and the longevity benefits that sauna may have, which have a lot to do with cardiovascular health, but also it activates serotonin, right? And if you combine it with the cold, which I don't like the cold plunge, but there's a dopamine hit that happens. But it also has an effect of, we've all been sauna high, right? And it kind of disinhibits you, right? And you kind of make friendships, like we're friends, right? Because we've saunaed together. It breaks down that barrier. It's like having a beer with somebody, almost.
Well, it's like a beer and a nice slice of wood-fired pizza in a way, right? How the physical drives the mental, right? Do you see that in Japanese culture?
Yeah. I was just gonna say, there's a word that's emerged from the kind of sauna trend that's been happening in Japan over the last 10, 15 years, and it's totonou. I don't know if you've heard this one, totonou. Yeah. The word itself means organized, but a few years back it was applied to the sauna cycle to mean that high that you get after doing 3 rounds of sauna, cold plunge, and resting outside for very specific amounts of time, and then you experience this high on your while you're resting outside. And I've experienced it. There was this one place deep in Japan. It's known as the Mecca of saunas in Japan. The water of the cold plunge comes from Mount Fuji, and that's where I experienced my first totonou. And it's just an unbelievable feeling. And I can totally understand how. They talk a lot about human evolution, the drunken ape theory, or the high ape theory. I think there's definitely a sweaty ape theory out there somewhere.
Brilliant! I love that.
We're sweaty, hairless apes, basically. But yeah, I know totonou.
Yeah.
I think I experienced that in a backyard sweat lodge in Draper, Utah, next to a canal.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
It's a great feeling.
Yeah.
It's a euphoric
We
feeling.
we all feel it. Yeah, I experienced that when I wrote my first sauna book. Unlike you, Bill, I'm a cold person, so I was a cold
Are you?
swimmer, typical Brit.
Yeah.
Because
That's all you
weirdly
have.
for a cold climate, we don't have a heat bathing history really, which is strange because but we've always been into the swimming, and there were the Victorian sea hospitals and things like that, you know, where you'd go and take sea air. Anyway, once I got the heat and the cold, then I got the totonohu.
That's the combination.
It's the well, I had Wim Hof was on the podcast, and we talk about two metaphors. It's like peanut butter and jelly, but the other one I happen to like is 1 + 1 = 3. It's this compound effect of the contrast therapy.
That's a good way of saying it.
Yeah,
1 +
right.
1 = 3.
I was going to talk a little bit about my book on building a sauna, but we don't have to go there in the connectivity. But I'll just leave this subject as good heat knows no borders, and it's just so fascinating. And getting back to Michael Allen's iconic book Sweat, where he traveled around the world, there is this commonality of sweat bathing, and it's just so fascinating how the cultures may differ, but you know that feeling we get. And you know, sauna travel is something. Emma, you're a scout for sauna circuits. And there's this idea that we are all one, you know, and that there are no borders with this universality of heat and cold. Anyone want to riff on that?
Well, I just wanted to ask you about sauna circuits and how many. Have you seen any sign-ups, or how does that work?
Yeah, this is so
now?
cool. Okay, so the Sauna Times map started with about 6 pins, you know, with a simple Google form within the Sauna Times website, and it just grew organically pre-COVID, and it kind of like stuck there at COVID with about 80 to 100 places or sweat bathing facilities, and mainly North America. And then as we came out of COVID, like many things, more and more saunas were submitted by saunapreneurs, proprietors, as well as those traveling and experiencing sauna. So this is a real bottom-up collection of sweat bathing facilities now in many places. We have pins in Australia, New Zealand, and so I'm always thinking about, well, then what? Now what? You know, where does that go? And then we put this idea together, and thank to Stig, this big shout out to Stig from the Norwegian Sauna Association, who connected me with Levi, who runs places.nu, and this is like a map software on steroids. It's really robust in terms of our ability to make collections. And he kept saying on our conference call, hey, you know, use this map, we can do collections. And I'm like, well, I'm really looking for circuits. I want to do circuits. And then we realized we were talking about the same thing, just different words for it. And so bottom line is that I was sitting in my backyard sauna, and I have these Christmas, you know, those party lights sort of strung up in my backyard sauna, and I'm like, that's the metaphor. Like each light is a facility, a place, and we can connect these lights and brighten up the universe for people traveling or living in a certain city or place. And then the judo move came about with the idea of scouts. So instead of me or someone trying to curate this massive ecosystem, that people, enthusiasts, like all of us, can curate their own circuit. Whether they're traveling somewhere, we had a couple go to Norway. He proposed to her in Bergen, and their journey as tourists to Norway, that's a circuit. So anyway, that's the story. That's the story of sauna circuits.
Your one, Bill.
Oh,
Salt Lake,
okay.
what is it? Well, no, I'm just asking, are there any sauna circuits where you live that you could create?
I mean, you could link up saunas and hot springs and kind of work your way around the West. There's a famous spa in Santa Fe. I think it's called 10,000 Waves, something like that. I think it's a Japanese style spa. And in Salt Lake itself, you know, it's really interesting. We had maybe 1 or 2 sauna places 3 years ago, and now there's, you know, half a dozen or 10.
Robbie is the scout for Manhattan, and we decided, you know, this is such a big monster where we live here, and there are sweat bathing facilities like popping up, and there's so many stuff. So we did decide to break New York up as a circuit. Robbie's circuit is Manhattan, and the other cool thing with the circuits is there are adjacencies. So the scout can identify like cool places to hike, cool breweries. Robbie's got a bookstore that he happens to love right across the street from the Russian and Turkish baths. So yeah, it's art. It's a way for people like us to do things like that, whether we live in a place or visiting. Good? Yeah. Back to books. This is so fun. This I'd like to tell you guys this was scripted, but this commonality of authors is a special thing for me, because I just want to say, like, writing a book is a commitment. It's a commitment of time. And a rapid fire question, Yuval, how long from idea to publish for you in your project?
It was 5 years. I wanted to do everything myself, all the photos, drawings, text, collages, and layout. And it was a long 5 years. I'd like to talk about it as a gestation period. My friends were sending me photos of their babies, and I'm like, 9 months is not impressive.
Yeah. How long, Bill, for Hotwired?
3 years.
Emma?
Okay, so I'm like the fast one here, because I did Sauna, The Power of Deep Heat was 8 months, and Wild Sauna as well, 8 months.
What's your secret?
The gun to the head of the deadline,
okay.
you know.
Yeah.
You know that one,
Yes.
Bill.
Absolutely. I wrote Sauna Build in 2013 for my first edition, which was only an ebook. It was a Google Doc, basically, to share with my friends. So much like the Sauna Build journey, I always say to people, like, the sauna that you build is never done, right? It's always in process, and it's the journey, not the destination. And there's always things to be. You can always be tuning the trim or changing things around, and that's much like my writing style. The beautiful thing that we are able to do is, I didn't know about editions. So I'm on my 4th edition of Sauna Build, start to finish. So the sauna building writing journey is never over in my case. Let's try to kind of maybe encapsulate, if there's one thing, those listening to this episode, if there's one thing that you'd like to share before we say goodbye. And by the way, thank you for being a part of this Sauna Talk. This is so wonderful. But if you're on a subway with somebody here in Manhattan and they're like, oh, you're into sauna, I'm into sauna, I wrote a book on sauna. What's a golden nugget within your work that you would like others to know as a takeaway, or also a window into the work that you've committed to?
First of all, I wouldn't encourage anybody to talk to a stranger on the New York subway. That's not something that we do here. No, I'm kidding. I think one thing that I often talk about is the concept of hadaka no tsukiai, which roughly translates into naked friendship, and talks about how when you remove your clothing and get into a public bath, you're also removing any type of hierarchy or social standing. And everybody from millionaire to farmer, everybody is the same in this place. And from an architectural perspective, it's been fascinating for me, because I truly think these places are some of the last bastions of truly public space where there's not tied to any type of commercialization or social position.
Beautiful. Bill?
Well, I'm old enough to remember when the New York subways were not air conditioned, and so they were like a sauna, and nobody was very happy about that situation. But choosing heat is a different thing. So if I were to talk to a grumpy stranger on the subway, I'd say, look, man, you're having a bad day, go to a sauna, you'll feel better.
Thank you. And Emma, you were sharing about how popular your second book is in North America, in the U.S. So the odds of running into somebody in the New York subway that knows your book is a little bit higher, I would say, than even in Britain. What's the takeaway that you'd like listeners to know about your both of your books, or one in particular?
I just was on the London Underground the other day, and these two women were going to Shoreditch, which is like super hip area, and one of them was saying, I really wish I was into sauna, because all my friends go to sauna and I don't like it. And I feel really left out. And I've got really bad FOMO, but I just don't like it. And I really wanted to pipe up and say, just give it a go, 5 minutes, just try.
And your book is an intro to
It's an
that.
intro, yeah. It's an intro, because we are an intro nation. It's not where we don't have any foundations or history in this department, so yeah.
How about you, Glenn? What would be your answer to that question?
I kind of alluded to that as like the sauna build is never over kind of a thing, but I'd like to riff on that and just say that anyone can do it. It's an empowering thing for me. I was just a Yahoo. I had one power tool when I built my first sauna, and I don't have an elaborate set of tools. I have a collection of tools that get me there, but I'm by no means a builder by trade nor a woodworker. But I think lowering the barrier to the ability for people to DIY and make it happen for themselves is something I'd like others to recognize.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
So you're not a skilled craftsman, and
No, I think
Probably is by
you
now.
probably are by
He
now.
probably
Yeah.
is by now.
I'm pretty good. And it's like good enough to me is better than excellent.
you started with limited skills and built them up.
Absolutely.
It's
My-
hopefully
Anybody can
yet.
start it.
Well, it's like there's an interesting relationship between like a son and his father, or a daughter and her mother. Like there's a lot of qualities we take from our parents. But one thing that inspired me was my father. He had his toolkit had 3 things in it. There was a pliers, a hammer, and a screwdriver. That was like, and if something needed more than those 3 tools, then he was like completely. And I saw that growing up, and I made a commitment to myself. Like I didn't want to be that guy. There's a long list of qualities my father had that I aspired to, but one of them was one of them wasn't his handiness, put it that way. So I went the other way, and I just, it's about will, right? If you have the will, everything can follow from that. And that's my takeaway for anyone listening that is interested in building their own sauna. Sure, we need time, and there's a lot of, WIT is I created this own little formula. WIT on the numerator, and then M on the denominator, and will, information, time. And when you do more of that, you need less of the denominator, which is money, right? These are empowering things on the numerator that lower the denominator.
That makes sense.
Great. Yeah.
Cool.
And just for those listening at home, we're getting a good sweat on by now. It's starting to.
Yuval, you're super chill. Yuval is closest to the stove, and we've been opening and closing the door a little bit.
5 layers isn't helping.
I don't want to let this podcast go. I've really enjoyed hanging with you guys. I mean, this actually happened just by accident, and I really don't want to let this episode go, and I want to give the mic back to anybody. Any final words for listeners? I appreciate the one statement to lead listeners into each of your books. Brilliant.
I just want to say something about mind and body and how they're so separated for all of us. Probably New York, London, particular examples of that. And the sauna can bring the body and the mind together, which sounds a bit esoteric, but I've seen it play out. And as what actually happened to me when I started doing saunas.
Yeah.
So I've changed as a person as well since I started writing about saunas. So
I agree with that. I think that's absolutely true. I think the mind-body connection kind of runs through heat and also to some extent cold. Although
yes, definitely with cold, Bill. You got to try it.
No,
You'll be there. You'll be there one day.
I'm a 30-second cold plunger. I have no stamina.
Whatever
cold
gets you
plunge.
there
Yeah.
is
It's
yeah.
enough.
Hey, do you guys know when the time to leave the hot room is?
Is it now?
What?
When the idea of an ice cold lake plunge is the best idea you've ever heard.
And it's delightful, isn't it, when you do it and you're so hot.
And
Here,
Bill, much like
With the
banging your
icebergs floating
much
in
like
it.
banging your head against the wall, it feels wonderful when it's over.
Exactly.
Thanks, guys, for being a part. So, Hot Wired, How the Hidden Power of Heat Makes Us Stronger by Bill Guilford, and Yuval Zohar, Towards a Nude Architecture, and Emma O'Kelly, Sauna, The Power of Deep Heat, and, of course, Sauna Build, from start to finish. Thank you, folks, for being a part of this impromptu author series at the Culture of Bathing in New York City.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
Glenn.
It's great
That
to
was great.
sweat with you guys.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Sauna Talk podcast. For even more content and discussion of all things sauna, visit saunatimes.com. That's where you'll find articles, resources, and the stories that keep the sauna culture moving forward. You can also connect with me, Glenn Auerbach, on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Substack. And if you're interested in live events, workshops, or local and regional sauna circuits, you'll find those details on the website as well. Finally, if you represent a brand aligned with authentic sauna culture and would like to explore partnership or sponsorship opportunities, I'd love to connect. Reach out through saunatimes.com and let's start the conversation. Thanks again for listening. Until next time, I'll see you on the bench.